Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Well friends, it's time to return to the MCU again, but before we begin, this episode may require a bit of backstory. If you may recall, I started this year's season with Avengers Endgame, which not only took place mainly during the year 2023, but in my opinion, it's literally the most biggest and epic superhero film ever, at least in the Infinity Saga. And let me tell you, reenacting Bruce Banner's blip, where he brought back all the people whom were snapped in 2018, was pretty challenging, but also brilliant and painful. Also to note, that film saw tragic ends for a few of our beloved Avengers. I mean, yes, Vision was killed in 2018 when Thanos ripped the Mind Stone from his head, and Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, sacrificed herself on the planet Vormir, while she and Clint Barton went back to 2014 to retrieve the Soul Stone. But by far, out of all those heroes, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, made the most tragic and heroic sacrifice ever by using the Infinity Stones to snap Thanos and his army out of existence. At least until the Disney parks give us King Thanos for Avengers Campus. Anyway, because of Tony's sacrifice this year, I decided to pay tribute to him by looking back at his debut movie, which surprisingly was the first film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So let's get started. Released on May 2nd, 2008, the movie is Iron Man. Now, on for the plot of the movie. While billionaire industrialist and genius inventor Tony Stark is conducting weapon tests in Afghanistan, terrorists kidnap him and force him to build a devastating weapon. Instead, using his intelligence and ingenuity, Tony builds a high-tech suit of armor and escapes captivity. When he uncovers a nefarious plot with global implications, he dons his powerful armor and vows to protect the world as Iron Man. So, what did I think of the film? Well, despite the fact that I never saw it in theaters at the time, due to me getting distracted by high school stuff, after getting it on DVD, I thought this movie was absolutely spectacular, and it made a terrific start for the MCU. And to further explain why I like it, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, a film featuring the character of Iron Man was in development at Universal Pictures, 20th Century Fox, and New Line Cinema at various times ever since 1990, before Marvel Studios reacquired the rights in 2005. Marvel put the project in production as its first self-financed movie, with Paramount Pictures distributing. In April 2006, Jon Favreau signed on as director and cited inspiration from Tom Clancy, James Bond, and RoboCop, and he compared his approach to an independent film. Filming took place from March to June 2007, primarily in California, to differentiate the film from numerous other superhero stories that are set in a New York City-esque environment. During filming, the actors were free to create their own dialogue because pre-production was focused on the story and action. Rubber and metal versions of the armor created by Stan Winston's company were mixed with computer-generated imagery to create the title character. Also to note, last year in 2022, Iron Man became the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie to be inducted into the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or authentically significant. Man, I haven't mentioned that for a long time. Now, the thing that I like about Iron Man, like most superhero films, is the action sequences, and I think the technology in this movie was really cool and futuristic. And while Tony Stark can be a bit reckless, I like that he's trying to prevent his technology from falling into the wrong hands and his company from having a bad reputation. Plus, I thought the iron armor testing scenes and flying scenes were absolutely amazing, and it almost made me think of the scenes in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie from the early 2000s. Also, I thought the scenes in Afghanistan were pretty intense and heart-pounding, especially during the part where Tony was being held hostage by the Ten Rings. By the way, this movie wouldn't be the last time we'd hear about the Ten Rings, because not only did they appear in the Iron Man sequels and Ant-Man, but they also appeared in the Shang-Chi movie 2 years ago. Also, I'd like to explain a little history regarding this arc reactor. For those who don't know, the arc reactor is a power source designed by Howard Stark and Anton Vanko in order to replicate the Tesseract's energy. After Red Skull was defeated during World War II, Stark and Vanko studied the Tesseract in order to create the arc reactor. Intended to be the first stage of Project Pegasus, the arc reactor remained generally inactive until Tony Stark was able to miniaturize it, not only to keep him alive after escaping Afghanistan, but also to power his Iron Man armors. And now, let's move on to the cast. Let's start with Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr., whom was in Weird Science, Tropic Thunder, Sherlock Holmes, the 2020 Dolittle movie, and this summer, he'll be in the upcoming Oppenheimer movie. Now, Tony is a brash but brilliant inventor, and he's self-described as a genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist. With his great wealth and exceptional technical knowledge, Stark was one of the world's most powerful men following the death of his parents, and he enjoyed the playboy lifestyle for many years, until he was kidnapped by the Ten Rings in Afghanistan, while demonstrating a fleet of Jericho missiles. With his life on the line, Stark created an armored suit which he used to escape his captors. Upon returning home, he utilized several more armors to use against terrorists. Fun fact, during the Marvel Comics age, Tony was created during a time where the hippie movement was in full swing, in a very anti-establishment era. Plus, I think Iron Man is a very successful character in the modern day, and I find it pretty interesting that Robert Downey Jr. and Tony Stark have a lot in common. If you don't know what I mean, Downey had problems with drugs like Iron Man does. He has a history of playing likable jerks, much like Tony. And of course, he's trying to make up for his own shady past, much as Tony is trying to make up for all the evils committed with Stark Industries technology. Next is Tony's personal assistant and love interest, Virginia Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, whom I remember as a young Wendy in Hook. In my eyes, Pepper is very smart, level-headed, and grounded, and I think hers and Tony Stark's relationship are pretty much reminiscent of a 1940s comedy. As Tony's assistant, Pepper takes care of his schedule, and she performs any task that he wishes. Later, when Stark returned from captivity, Potts was trusted enough by him to see his Iron Man suits and his workshop. Also, I like that she helped Stark defeat Obadiah Stane by overloading the arc reactor, killing him in the process. Afterwards, Stark made Potts his new business partner and CEO of Stark Industries. Next we come to James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, played by Terrence Howard, who would later voice Tiana's dad James in The Princess and the Frog. Rhodes is an officer with the United States Air Force and liaison between the military and the Department of Acquisitions and Stark Industries, where he became close friends with Tony Stark. When Stark had been kidnapped by the Ten Rings, Rhodes personally led a mission to rescue his best friend. However, upon their return, Rhodes saw Stark moving away from developing his weapons for the military and soon discovered that he was instead focusing on becoming a hero known as Iron Man. Despite all of his fears for his friend's safety, Rhodes still joined Iron Man in bringing down Obadiah Stane's schemes while trying to keep Stark secret, only for Stark to reveal them to the media himself. To me, Rhodes is a highly distinguished officer, and he generally enjoys being involved in Tony's revelries. But at the same time, he is sometimes annoyed by Stark's flippant and reckless behavior. Also to note, like with Bruce Banner, it is kind of distracting that Rhodes will be played by a different actor in later movies. Moving on, we also have J.A.R.V.I.S, Stark's natural language user interface computer system voiced by Paul Bettany, who'd later act in Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, fun fact, J.A.R.V.I.S was named after Edwin Jarvis in honor of the butler who worked for Howard Stark and the Stark household. Over time, J.A.R.V.I.S was upgraded into an artificially intelligent system tasked with running business for Stark Industries as well as security for Tony Stark's mansion and Stark Tower. After creating the Mark II armor, Stark uploaded J.A.R.V.I.S into all the Iron Man armors, as well as allowing him to interact with the other Avengers, giving them valuable information during combat. Now, what I like about J.A.R.V.I.S is that he's always ready to help Tony, and he's willing to do whatever he asks. He's also well informed and logical, as he is an AI creation. He's also able to respond and converse in a familiar tone with his creator, responding to Stark's quips. Plus, he's also trusted enough to run Stark Industries alongside Pepper Potts. Last but not least, we come to the very first Marvel Cinematic Universe villain, Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, best known from Disney's Tron movies, Rankin Bass's The Last Unicorn, Sony's Surf's Up, and the 2016 Little Prince movie. Now, Stane was the business partner of Tony Stark and a good friend of his father, Howard. After Howard's death, Stane became interim CEO of Stark Industries until Tony took over officially shortly after. Stane's jealousy led to him betraying Stark by joining forces with the Ten Rings to organize a failed attempt to assassinate him, so that Stane could become CEO once again. He further armed the Ten Rings with Stark Industries weapons in order to facilitate their campaign in the war-torn Gilmira. He eventually betrayed and had the Ten Rings executed during their failure to kill Stark. When his involvement with terrorists was exposed by Pepper Potts, Stane created an armor and adopted the name Ironmonger, and he attempted to kill Stark himself, leading to his own death. In my opinion, Stane is a very power-hungry and arrogant man, as well as a backstabber and a double-crosser. Also, I find it pretty interesting that Jeff Bridges not only shaved his head and grew a beard for the role, but he also researched the Book of Obadiah and learned that retribution is a major theme in the book of the Bible, which is something that Stane represents. And now on to my final words. Overall, Iron Man was a fantastic movie to kick off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It has great cinematography, kick-ass action scenes, a thrilling and heart-pounding story, and excellent acting. Plus, while Tony Stark can be reckless throughout this movie, and he can sometimes be a jerk in the later MCU movies, you can't at least feel a little bit of sympathy for what he and his company are going through. And again, I like that Tony is trying to make up for it. And I thought Obadiah Stane was very twisted, arrogant, and badass for the MCU's first supervillain. With all that said, This movie is one that I highly recommend everybody to check out if you want to immerse yourself with Tony Stark's origins as Iron Man. And trust me, you'll be in for a very thrilling ride. As for my rating, I'll give it a full 100%. Also, in case you're wondering, I will blog the Iron Man sequels later this year, but I won't say when though. Anyway, that's all for now. Join me for my next blog where we look at a triple feature animated package film set in the 100-Acre Wood. Mustang Power.